Good morning. Plato's Charmides, day 6. Or did you ever know of a fear which fears itself or other fears, but none of the objects of fear? I never did, he said. Or of an opinion which is an opinion of itself and of other opinions, and which has no opinion on the subjects of opinion in general? Certainly not. He needs to step back a little bit more sometimes. But it seems we are assuming a science of this kind, which, having no subject matter, is a science of itself and of the other sciences. Philosophy of science? Yes, that is what is affirmed. It is certainly a curiosity if it really exists. All things are curiosities if you think about it long enough. We must not, however, as yet absolutely deny the possibility of such a science, but continue to inquire whether it exists. You are quite right. Well then, this science of which we are speaking is a science of something, and is of the nature to be a science of something. Yes, just as that which is greater is of a nature to be greater than something else. Yes, and this something else is less if the other is conceived to be greater, to be sure. And if we could find something which is at once greater than itself, and greater than other great things, but not greater than those things in comparison of which the others are greater, then that thing would have the property of being greater and also less than itself. That, Socrates, he said, is the inevitable inference. Or if there is a double which is a double of itself and of other doubles, both they and itself will be halves, for the double is relative to the half. That is true. See, this is why it was difficult for me to read Plato and take Socrates seriously as more than just another sophist. But I'm trying, and I'm succeeding, I think. And that which is more than itself will also be less, and that which is heavier will also be lighter, and that which is older will also be younger, and the same with other things. That which is a nature relative to itself will retain also the nature of its object. I mean to say, for example, that hearing is, as we say, of sound or voice. Is that true? Yes. Okay. Maybe he lands it somehow. Then if hearing hears itself, it must hear a voice, for there is no other way of hearing. Certainly. And sight also, my excellent friend, if it sees itself, must have a color, for sight cannot see that which has no color. No. Do you remark, Critias, that in several of the examples which have been recited, the notion of a relation to self is altogether inadmissible, and in other cases hardly credible? Inadmissible, for example, in the case of magnitudes, number, and the like. Very true. But in the case of hearing and sight, or in the power of self-motion, and the power of heat to burn, and so on, this relation to self will be regarded as incredible by some, but perhaps not by others. And some great man, my friend, is wanted, who will satisfactorily determine for us whether there is nothing which has an inherent property of relation to self rather than to something else, or some things only and not others. And whether in this class of self-related things, if there be such a class, that science, which is called wisdom or temperance, is included. I'm assuming, maybe I shouldn't, but I'm assuming this is a translator decision again, and he simply saying that епιστήμη, that science, which is called σωφροσύνην, don't know how to pronounce that, is included. I altogether distrust, I should look it up, I guess, maybe afterwards. I altogether distrust my own proper power of determining these matters. Let me just make a note. I am not certain whether such a science of science can possibly exist, and even if it does undoubtedly exist, I should not acknowledge it to be wisdom or temperance, until I can also see whether such a science would or would not do us any good. For I have an impression that temperance is a benefit and a good. I would not equate the philosophy of science with wisdom. And therefore, O son of Calais Crows, as you maintain that temperance or wisdom is a science of science, and also of the absence of science, I will request you to show in the first place, as I was saying before, I forgot the time again, the possibility, and the second place, the advantage of such a science, and then perhaps you may satisfy me that you are right in your view of temperance. Critias heard me say this, and saw that I was in a difficulty. And as one person, when another yawns in his presence, catches the infection of yawning from him, so did he seem to be driven into a difficulty by my difficulty. Oh, that's beautiful. Catching aporia from someone else's aporia. But as he had a reputation to maintain, he was ashamed to admit before the company that he could not answer my challenge or determine the question at issue, and he made an unintelligible attempt to hide his perplexity. That, dear friends, is why John teaches that when you experience aporia in a group setting, practicing dialectic in dialogos, just let it be. Just sink into the silence. Listen. Just listen. Don't try to speak your way out of it. In order that the argument might proceed, I say to him, well then, Critias, if you like, I should make a mental note of that myself as well. Don't just speak to speak. Let us assume that the science of science is possible. Whether the assumption is right or wrong may hereafter be investigated. Admitting its complete possibility, will you tell me how such a science enables us to distinguish what is known or do not know, what we know or do not know, which, as we were saying, is self-knowledge or wisdom? Was that not? To distinguish what we know or do not know is self-knowledge or wisdom. Yes, said Socrates. Yes, Socrates, said he, and the rest, I think, follows. For he who has his science or knowledge which knows itself will become like the knowledge which he has, in the same way that he who has swiftness will be swift, and he who has beauty will be beautiful, and he who has knowledge will know. In the same way, he who has that knowledge which is self-knowing will know himself. I do not doubt, I said, that a man will know himself when he possesses that which has self-knowledge. But what necessity is there that, having this, he should know what he knows and what he does not know? Question mark. I should have read that a bit differently. Because, Socrates, they are the same. Very likely, I said, but I fear I remain as stupid as ever. For still I fail to comprehend how this knowing what you know and do not know is the same as the knowledge of self. What do you mean? He said. This is what I mean, I replied. I will admit that there is a science of science. Can this do more than determine that of two things one is and the other is not science or knowledge? No, just that. Is it then the same thing as knowledge or want of knowledge of health, or the same as knowledge or want of knowledge of justice? Certainly not. The one is medicine and the other is politics, whereas that of which we are speaking is knowledge pure and simple. Very true. What is knowledge pure and simple? What is knowledge pure and simple? How do you know without having something known? Something which is known. I don't know. Critias apparently does, because he responds, very true. And if a man has only knowledge of knowledge, without any further knowledge of health and justice, the probability is that he will only know that he knows something, and has a certain knowledge, both in his own case and that of others. True. Then how will this knowledge or science teach him to know what he knows? For he knows health not through wisdom or temperance, but through the art of medicine, and he has learned harmony from the art of music, and building from the art of building, but in neither case from wisdom or temperance, and the same with other things. It seems so. How will wisdom, regarded only as a knowledge of knowledge, or science of science, ever teach him that he knows health, or that he knows building? It is impossible. Then he who is ignorant of these things will only know that he knows, but not what he knows. True. Then wisdom or being wise appears to be not the knowledge of the things which we do or do not know, but only the knowledge that we know or do not know. Okay, I'm coming back. Then wisdom or being wise appears to be not the knowledge of the things which we do or do not know, but only the knowledge that we know or do not know. That is the inference. Then he who has this knowledge will not be able to establish whether a claimant knows or does not know that which he says that he knows. He will only know that he has a knowledge of some kind, but wisdom will not show him of what the knowledge is. It seems not. Neither will he be able to distinguish the pretender in medicine from the true physician, nor between any other true and false professor of knowledge. Let us consider the matter in this way. If the wise man or any other man wants to distinguish the true physician from the false, how will he proceed? He will not talk to him about the science of medicine, for as we were saying, the physician understands nothing but health and disease. True. But the physician knows nothing about science, for this has been assumed to be the province of wisdom alone. True. And further, since medicine is science, we must infer that he does not know anything about medicine. Exactly. We will stop there for the day. Have a good one. Oops, I forgot.